Hello, I will be demonstrating and explaining a primary source document analysis tool found at DocsTeach, the online tool for teaching with documents from the National Archives. And I will also, as I mentioned, be explaining why document analysis is an important tool for students to be able to construct authentic narratives of history. Now, the site that I'm using, as I said, is called DocsTeach, and this is a great site for students and teachers to find activities and tools to help students become better, more adept at analyzing primary source documents. Now, on this website, you will go ahead and click on the menu button, and here are the list of contents of the website. There are documents, activities, activity tools, popular topics, and resources. Now we're going to be looking at a tool for analyzing primary source documents. So I will click on the activity tools, and then I will go down to analyzing documents. Now, I mentioned this website was so great because there is the analyzing documents, which is such an important tool for students to be able to learn how to do, with proficiency and an eye for detail. But this website also provides different activities that go beyond just analyzing the document. Students will analyze documents, and then with the information they have gained from the analysis, they will, in certain activities, be asked to compare and contrast, to find a sequence, make connections, map history, and see the big picture, as well as weighing evidence and interpreting data. So these are all things that students will do after they've analyzed the documents. So students becoming very well equipped and adept at analyzing documents allows them to do so much more with the document. They're able to do all these other activities that will expand on their understanding of not only just the document, but of the era that it's from. But as I said, we will be going to the Analyzing Documents page. And here, we're going to look at the 4 keys to analyzing a document. It's a 4-step process where the first step, you meet the document, you then observe its parts, you try to make sense of it, and you use it as historical evidence. Now, eventually, students will have this process down to such a degree that they will be able to go through any primary source document or artifact and be able to analyze it. And then after the analysis is done, they'll be able to go on to the other activities, like making connections, finding sequences, seeing the big picture, and weighing evidence. Now, the great thing about primary source analysis is that it helps students to understand context and then also extract information to make informed judgments. That is really what we're after here with the primary source analysis tools, to help students be able to put the document in context, locate evidence, and then make even more informed judgments than just straight analysis. But as we go down, we will click on Discover Activities. And from there, we will click on an era. So I will go ahead and click on Civil War and Reconstruction. But this website is great because it has so many eras to choose from and so many different activities. But the one that we will be doing today is comparing Civil War recruitment posters. This was developed by the National Archives educational team. So, this activity is going to be focusing on details and comparing and contrasting. The activity was created by the National Archives education team. The era is the Civil War and Reconstruction. Thinking skill is historical analysis and interpretation. And on Bloom's taxonomy, the level or the higher order of thinking is analyzing. And for this activity, it's recommended for middle school students. So the instructions are for students to compare and contrast two military recruitment posters and analyze the various perspectives regarding the role of African Americans during the Civil War. They will determine the purpose of each poster, one recruiting black men for the Union Army and one for the Confederacy, and analyze how the use of language conveys the intended message. So we will click on Start Activity. And here is the first poster. Now, right off the bat, you will be able to notice that this is a Union poster who is trying to enlist freed African Americans to fight for the Union cause. Now, you can tell right off the bat because of the words freedom, protection, pay, and a call to military duty. Now, if you were a recently freed black man or a slave, a recently, freed slave, these were things that were obviously very important to you: freedom, protection, pay, and a call to military duty. Now let's just quickly look at the second poster. This one, Wanted, 200 Negroes, by direction of Lieutenant General Pemberton, Commanding Department of Mississippi, East Louisiana. And in this poster, he's calling upon the planners of Lowndes and adjacent counties for Negroes to complete the fortifications. So he's asking for men to basically do construction work. And for every man furnished, including cooks, the quartermaster's department will pay $1.25 per day to the owners, and the owners must feed, provide tents and shelter, or no, tents and shelter will be provided by the government, but good and experienced overseers, the men who watched over slaves and would, motivate them by whipping them to keep them working, would be employed to stay with and take charge of the laborers. So that is from the Confederate Army. So right off the bat, we see the difference. The first poster is talking about freedom, protection, pay, protection of colored troops, the duty of African American soldiers to fight for freedom. It's a much more powerful poster if you are someone who believes in freedom and equality. And then the discussion questions. These are the questions that are asked for students to be able to analyze the document. Number one, who do you think created each of these posters and for what purpose? I believe the posters were created by people in the government, people in the military, and they were created because on the north side, they wanted to tap a resource that was obviously not being used beforehand or by the Confederacy. This new untapped resource of manpower who was obviously going to be dedicated and committed to the cause. On the Confederate side, the posters were created by Southern slave owners who were creating it because they needed laborers. Now, what's actually interesting is that John Pemberton, who's the general in the Confederate poster, he was actually one of the few northern or men from the north who fought for the Confederacy. He married a woman who was from the South, and that's how he became involved with the Confederacy. But he was obviously had no qualms with slavery or putting, black men to work for no pay. So who do you think is the intended audience? Well, the intended audience is obviously for the federal poster is black, recently freed slaves or freed black men, because they are the ones that are going to heed the call to come join the army. Now, the intended audience for the Confederate poster is white Southern slave owners, men who could provide the bodies that this poster is asking for, the laborers. Now, what does the creator of each poster hope the audience will do? The creator of the poster for the North wants recently freed slaves and freed black men to join the Union cause, join the army, and fight for the Union to destroy the Confederacy. The Confederate poster is hoping that white Southern slave owners will lend the government some of their slaves to complete some of the work that needs to be done in terms of constructing fortifications. So both ones are trying to get people to join the cause. One is asking the actual person, the actual, black man to join and fight. One is asking a Southern white slave owner to lend his slaves out and he'll get paid. Are the posters effective? Why or why not? I would say that the Union poster would be very effective. For a recently freed slave or a free black man in the North to have this opportunity to fight in the cause of destroying slavery, this evil institution that had dehumanized and just was the scourge on America's soul, to be able to be a part of the instrument that destroyed the institution of slavery, that obviously had to be effective. Now, the Confederate poster might have been effective because of it was giving money away. I don't really know the conversion rate of $1.25 is a lot of money, but it wouldn't have been as effective because Southern white slave owners would have probably wanted their slaves on their plantations to take care of their needs as opposed to lending them out to the Confederate Army. So I think the federal poster would have been very effective, the Confederate poster not so much. Now that we've analyzed the documents, we have one last thing. How does the language used reflect the differences in attitude and perspective regarding African Americans? Obviously, the Confederate poster is a racist view of African Americans, views them as inferior, obviously as property, while the Northern Union poster seeks to give African Americans, a chance at redemption and dignity by standing up and being part of the army that crushes slavery in the American continent. And the language that's used is the Confederate poster uses language that basically refers to the black men as property, not even humans. The poster for the federal recruitment poster regards the men, the recently freed slaves and the African Americans as men who are needed to help win this war. So you can tell the difference. It's obvious racism versus a real honest appeal to recently freed slaves and free black men to fight for the Union cause to destroy slavery. And then once students were done, they would send their response, and that would be the end of the analysis. Now, once again, this tool not only made students find out all those questions, the 4 steps, but it also asked them to dig a little deeper, to think about the language, to analyze motivation, and obviously the analyzing of the document puts it in context. So the student is able to do a lot of thinking, a lot of analyzing. It's a very useful tool, It's a great way for teachers to get their students involved in some higher level thinking.